You're never going to get more benefits from arbitrage in the long term than from owning the real estate because that's where you get all the benefits. That's how a lot of entrepreneurs who invest in real estate become millionaires through their net worth because of
Definitely.
the pure appreciation. So I always tell people go all in on arbitrage, replace your 9 to 5, get those 40 to 60 hours back, and then start buying real estate once you become financially free.
Yeah, we've seen so many things happen in real estate probably the last 3 years. This big boom around 2020 and 2021 with record low interest rates, people jumping into house flipping and Airbnb. And then we started kind of, from what I've heard, a little bit of a pullback. But what I think is ultimately going to happen is Airbnb is likely going to launch.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is going to be this affordability crisis that we're in. Have you seen anything around that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right now, definitely, I see a lot of people traveling less and spending less. There's definitely a contraction in the market, but I feel like we provide such a unique experience compared to what hotels can't that I feel like Airbnb and short-term rental, especially with what we do with houses, it's always going to be a very unique opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. So I heard it was what, I think 2020 to 2022, 40% of all mortgages in America were taken out during that period at record low interest rates and record high home prices. And so what I'm betting is that what we start to see is people turn to Airbnb to bring more liquidity from their homes. So the people that end up needing to lease their homes out, they'll look at what they can get on a long-term rental compared to a short-term, and then they're going to start moving in that direction.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Is there a certain markets that you think are really great for Airbnb?
I always tell people to stick to primary markets, right? You always want to, for example, like all my properties are in California. So typically areas like Newport Beach, Long Beach, areas around LA City. And I'm not talking about Compton or Watts, but like the strong, desirable areas of LA, like Mid City, Echo Park, Silver Lake, where usually rents are high, mortgages are high. Everybody wants to live there because you're in the middle of everything.
Right.
These strong primary markets are definitely performing really well compared to secondary and tertiary markets. Like when you go, we used to live in LA, right?
Yeah.
So if you go into the valley, west or east into the Inland Empire or Joshua Tree, a lot of those areas are struggling right now during this contraction. So definitely sticking to those primary markets.
So if in LA County, I know, rent regulations is very strict. If you do leases shorter than 30 days, do you then somehow move away from some of those regulations?
So it depends. Like, for example, in the city of LA, you're only allowed to have one short-term rental permit per operator. But what we've done is I got one under my name, one under my wife, then my cousin, and then my mom. So that's one way that you can get around it. But again, in the city of LA, they also require the operator, the person with the permit, to live on site. But I can guarantee you that 95% of people don't live on site. And I'm not encouraging that. I always want people to follow the rules, but I just think that a lot of people are riding the wave because they haven't cracked down on that rule. Even though they made it, they're not really enforcing it. So people are just riding the wave until they do. But that is one of the challenges with short-term rentals is the regulation.
So in a place like Silver Lake, for example, where it's a very expensive, great location, massive gentrification last few years, a traditional one bedroom would rent for what, $3,000 or $3,500?
Yeah, exactly.
But how about on Airbnb? What would they be able to pull?
I would say at least 30% more, 25 to 30% more is reasonable.
Got it. And so do you advise generally in a place like LA where it's pretty expensive to buy or to do a lease and then kind of sublet?
I always tell people that they should look at it as two phases, right? I think we can agree that the goal should be to own the real estate. You're never going to get more benefits from arbitrage in the long term than from owning the real estate because that's where you get all the benefits. That's how a lot of entrepreneurs who invest in real estate become millionaires through their net worth because of the pure appreciation. But like perfect example is in early 2019, I wanted to replace my wife's 9 to 5, and I knew I needed 3 Airbnbs to do it based on my numbers from what I did in 2017 and 2018. But I didn't have the capital to go and buy, and I didn't know any of these other creative financing strategies. So I'm like, man, I need the down payments, the closing costs, the furniture. I don't have the money to acquire 3 rentals.
Right.
But I did have the money to go and sublease 3 properties, and so it was a short-term goal to replace her 9 to 5. So I always tell people, go all in on arbitrage, replace your 9 to 5, get those 40 to 60 hours back, and then start buying real estate once you become financially free.
That makes sense. So you've been doing this since 2017?
Buying and doing short-term rent. So I started buying real estate in 2012. When I was 24, I started buying property. And in 2017, I launched my first 4 units on Airbnb that I already owned. 2019 went all in on arbitrage, and then 2020 started buying a ton of real estate.
Got it. Because I think a lot of people have this like belief that they need to make a ton of money, save up like $100,000 to put 20% down on a property, and then fix it up, and then potentially do Airbnb. But from what I hear, a lot of your students have like $0 in, and they basically follow a method. And
so subleasing is just a great way to get your feet wet. And at least for my audience, most of my audience are 9-to-5ers who want to become entrepreneurs. And so this is a great way, right? They got to hire a handyman, someone to do cleaning, someone to do maintenance, communication. So they start building these entrepreneurship skills with a low barrier to entry, right? It's not like you're risking $80,000. You could launch a sublease with 10 to 15 grand, depending on if it's a single family home or a studio. They start getting this experience, and then they could build from there. But like I said, I always tell people, start with subleasing, replace your 9-to-5, and then start buying the real estate. On the other hand, something that I started doing back since 2012, and I think you might have started this way too, is like house hacking, right? So like I had a mortgage of $1,500 with utilities. It was $1,800 back in 2012. I lived in a master, rented 3 rooms for $600 a pop, and then I started doing the exact same thing with short-term rentals in 2017. So I would buy a house like every couple years, do a split home ADU, and I would buy it with an FHA loan or 5% conventional. But I would Airbnb one side, live on the other side, live for free, and then do it again and again and again.
Yeah, so it's funny, like most of my friends that have done extremely well, and myself as well, when getting into real estate, they all focus on cash flow and building out equity and building out the next step versus like running out there trying to buy their dream home and then hoping that 9-to-5 continues to grow and the world works perfectly, and it never does. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool.
If you've enjoyed this clip and you'd like to watch the full episode, you can do so on my main YouTube channel by clicking the video here.